Hi, I'm Hyde. I'm the curator and one of the artists exhibiting that works for the show.
Hi, I'm Mustaghfir. I'm one of the exhibiting artists.
Hi, I'm Jialei and I'm also the exhibiting artist.
We actually have one more teacher, but he's not here with for the interview. And all of us are actually students of BA Fine Arts in LaSalle.
So the title of the exhibition is Laughter is a Breath Away from a Sigh. This show is a collection or a combination of our individual works, which are mainly creative expressions of desire. So I think all of our works, we reference like the human body as a starting point to look at our own personal, individual like relationships with the body. So I think like in Hyde's work, he looked at his own negotiations with his health, and also we also have like we're looking at our external the people around us and our relationships with them. So like particularly Jialei and in her work, breathing, gasping, words stuck in my throat. I'm looking at her experience with her ancestors, and also Xie with his family, and also in my work, maternal unrest, like with my own family. And also we also have like how we relate to our environment. Yeah, so I think the body becomes a point of reference.
So we are friends from the same school, and we have always thought that our individual practices have always had very fruitful overlaps, which we also like have newly discovered throughout the planning of this exhibition.
I think for actually all of our works is we are using creative practices as a means to reach for kind of like a state of ideal, primarily working through the body as a medium to get to that state of ideal. And yeah, and some of it is kind of like a direct reference to the body itself, how it externalizes or expresses itself, but some others kind of uses objects as kind of like vicarious projections, I would say. Yeah, and ultimately it's just, I would say that it's a kind of desire for like a sort of kinship with your own bodies. And I think noticing that in our own individual practices, because all these works are actually works done in school in our own separate bubbles. It's just that we notice they could cohere together very well in a singular show.
I think for me, the starting point for my work is really to sit down and ask myself honestly what is the most intense emotion that I feel at that point of time. I think for the work, These Hands They Hold Me Because You Won't, at that point of time, I was feeling this deep sense of yearning for support and care from an external figure. But oftentimes I think like can be unmet. And so I wanted to create this external set of limbs that mimics an actual human body to show this idea of like desperation and forceful embrace that I have to like make on my own just because of the lack of an actual one in real life. So that is like my own individual negotiation in my body. And also apart from just like my own individual like emotion, I also look at my relationship with an external person. So in maternal unrest, I was specifically looking at my mother, and I was examining like my relationship with her, and so I wanted to like materialize that into an artwork.
So in my work, breathing, gasping, words stuck in my throat, it's basically also about yearning. I think we talk about that a lot. For me, I think it's the yearning for communication. I just think language is so insufficient as a medium of expression sometimes, which is why I made like my own pseudo-language, and then I performed it like with writing a letter to my great-grandfather, who's constantly a subject of my projected desires, to reconcile like the whole intergenerational trauma and everything.
I think it's good to think about how the works complement or contrast one another, not just the mediums themselves, but also in terms of aesthetic qualities or emotional charge. I think a lot of our works are very grounded in that kind of like emotional charge, particularly in how it guides the viewers in terms of like how to feel in a sense. And also I think technicality wise it's good to think about the lighting and the general mood of the space. I think when we were planning for the exhibitions, everything looked quite good on paper and like in our heads, but kind of like realizing that the space is much bigger than what we thought it was, and our works are much more like smaller in comparison as well. And so the exhibition is actually quite porous, but we framed the kind of artistic direction, the curatorial framing in a way that this kind of shortcomings are able to complement the general ambience of the show, I think, and the general ideas as well. So for example, you know, there's quite a lot of breathing room between like each works. There's a lot of gaps, and that's quite in line with the kind of idea of this distance unmet.
I think with like viewer experience when they encounter an exhibition, different individuals have different inclinations to the kind of artworks that they look for in an exhibition. But I think if at least one artwork speaks to them or resonates with them, especially because our works come from individual personal experiences. So I think just one work would be good if like, they can relate to it.
So I think as a collective, I think ultimately we want to perhaps inspire others to change the outlook on how they view everyday experiences, how things can be kind of like expressed differently, maybe not just words but gestural as well, or like intense emotions can be expressed differently.
I think generally it was quite a fun experience, like setting up with your friends. Also, it's a very different setting from what we're normally used to, because usually we'll set up in like a school setting, so let's say partitions are easier to shift, or there's not much consideration into lighting. So it was nice to be given an opportunity to experiment with an exhibition space that had like track lights and all the technical equipment. So we're quite grateful for the opportunity from the art outreach team, who has been very selfless and very kind in tending to our needs and our requirements. And also I think we learned quite a bit from the curatorial kind of framing of the show down to the actual installation. And yeah.
I think we realized that lighting can really make or break an exhibition. It's such an overlooked kind of facet of installation, and especially for us, we actually use lighting to kind of like reduce the visibility of the gaps between the works. So there are gaps, but also they're not so jarring. So it creates a kind of like better transition or flow between the works as well. And I think it's nice to think about how different works of different mediums, for instance Jialei's work, because it's a video format with a sound file. The sound file actually complements the other works as well. The other works that are more sculptural or paintings, basically more visually grounded. And I think it's a really good learning experience in how different works kind of like can work with another in a space, you know.
I think for me, because I'm not as technically strong setting up as these two, so when we were installing the vinyl, I was really struggling. Yeah, it was really hard, and yeah, I think it's something that I definitely can take away.
So I mean, first and foremost, actually, it's nice that us as friends had to kind of like come up with all, not just the exhibition space also, but also kind of marketing. Marketing collaterals. It was a really good learning point, and we got to experience quite a bit of like creativity in terms of making up with the catalogue. But it was interesting because there was an accident. We forgot to put our names in the catalogue, like whose work belongs to who. We got responses from the audience that told us that it's nice that there's a distance between the artist and the art, because it could the collection of work could work as if like they are all made by one person. So I think that just kind of like shows how much potent our synergy is as a group as well, which is quite a nice like happy accident. Yeah.